Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics. If you like this type of content, please consider subscribing to the channel or becoming a patron at patreon.com/Afterlife Topics. Hello everybody, welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus. I know it's been a few days since I've had any videos up, taking a little bit of a breather. So I want to jump back on the saddle and talk about verifying a lot of data concerning the other side. So this is obviously something I've been hoping would happen for a very long time, which is having direct link-ups, being able to speak to in a conversational manner almost any time I want people on that side. This doesn't mean I'm some kind of great medium. It means I have this ability specifically with certain people at this point. So if you've been following this channel, you know it's been a bumpy ride. You know that I've had misinformation inserted into things along the way, which unfortunately caused a lot of distrust about what's real and what's not real. And we can thank extraterrestrial thinking for that. We can thank this misguided educational experiment, whatever that was, for doing that. Again, it was a boneheaded move, although one of the things that made that so boneheaded is because I would say 70 or 80% of the information I was getting was true, and the absurdities were not true. So I still want to keep sifting through that to figure out what was real and what wasn't by interrogating and talking to the man who did it, which was Kilamaja. But despite that, being able to sync up with, let's say, my parents allows me to confirm my astral experiences and then ask specific things that I've been investigating and trying to figure out for a long time. And also, in addition to that, I've been having astral experiences that have been syncing up with my communication experiences and confirming them, including astral communications that I can bring back here, and then I can speak telepathically to the same person, for example, my parents, and I can just verify information that way. So actually, let's go ahead and jump into the slideshow that we have today, which is, again, astral information clarified. So basically what I just said, after the July 2021 ordeal, very vivid mental clairaudient communication, easy contact with my parents, and I've now spent plenty of time more recently asking questions and trying to learn more about what we call the fifth density, this higher frequency that we go into, that is the quote so-called afterlife. It seems to be that first level, which is, it's not some temporary place, you temporarily go here until you go merge with source consciousness. A lot of these are, in my opinion, miscommunications about how it all works. The process of progression through planes of existence, very, very individual based. And there's many people on that fifth density who have been there for a very long time. And there's some people who just skip over it and go straight to much higher realms. Kind of like I've always said, like a lot of the stuff that I've talked about, doing this direct communication is verifying many things, but also surprising me with a lot of twists and turns. So I'm also, as I said, having astral experiences to verify it. So I have the guide named Llewellyn, and let me just talk about that real quick. Llewellyn, very beautiful honey blonde hair, also ET, taking human form from a much higher level. She has basically come down to enter what we call fifth density, and she's been staying with my parents, which is, I feel really bad for her because staying with my parents sounds really rough, but she is very, very old and she can handle it and is having a good time. But she was also my guide growing up. And so since she was my guide growing up, she wasn't fully aware of me all the time, but she was aware of my family and my parents, and so it's most comfortable for her just to go back to my parents' ranch on the fifth density. The point is on 3 occasions now, because she's staying in my bedroom, which is the place that I typically project into at my parents' place, 3 times I've been able to partially project in there, see her and talk to her and have conversations, which, unlike the telepathic transmission, it's audible and normal, like almost like normal physical contact. So I've been able to verify a lot through that number one, she's real. It's not all some big Arcturian mind game. She is a real guide who I have been able to look at, see, come face to face with, talk to, and then I wake up and then I sync up with her telepathically here. And then she's like, oh, Cyrus, it's so funny. I was lying in bed. You came into my room like a disembodied voice. Like I'm the ghost, right? So she's lying there, maybe going to sleep, and then I manifest into the room like hello, this is Cyrus. And that is the way that things sometimes operate. It's very similar again to the film The Others with Nicole Kidman, where that was a kind of reverse haunting. Not to spoil the film, you'll know if you watch it. My parents have said that they're experiencing that exact issue with an owner of the ranch on this side who they keep seeing like walking by on the ranch on that side. So now let's go into information I've picked up along the way. Interesting reports, plenty of information to corroborate my own experiences and books over the years. Let's get started on a few subjects. First one is materialization of objects. These ideas were confirmed that on the astral side you can make objects, you can change matter, you can create things. But one thing I think I didn't fully express or understand before was that there is a limit to that, in the sense that there's an instability. So if you create an object, if you create a doll, if you create a candle, whatever it is, when you lose attention on it, when your focus is lost, the item tends to disappear. This is something I used to speculate and ask questions about and try to learn on astral trips, because I knew people were creating and materializing anything they wanted to, but my question was, wouldn't the world just be filled with garbage? So what my parents and Llewellyn are telling me, and also Takayama are telling me, is that you can essentially think of it as there's a non-material sort of world where people can create and manifest things with thought, and then there's a normal physical universe planted on top of that. So if you want to build a structure and you know it's going to last, and you actually have to get the materials just like in this world and build the structure. You can materialize a structure, but then there's a risk that that materialized structure will become unstable and disappear, especially if you forget about it. I sometimes think about Leslie Flint recordings, that you can have these almost loosely saying non-material, but materialization things in place. Like I remember the Leslie Flint tape the lady was talking about. She always comes home. There's a cup of tea on a counter waiting for her, and she pours it. It is a cycle, a process that she made by herself. Materializes tea, she drinks it, it's nice. But the materialization of objects does seem to have a limit, and that's always something I've been curious about. Probably I can make a whole video talk about this at another time, but I think it's really important to get that out. Next one. Another thing that I already know about and have known about, which is that telepathy is the basic form of communication. It's like I do now with these contacts on that side, but it's much clearer and much easier compared to what I'm doing right now, using this telepathic interfacing skill that I developed. And one of the most surprising things I've learned from my parents, from Llewellyn, who is much more advanced, and so she knows what she's talking about, is that verbal communication has real perks on that side. And I say this because I could spend all day talking to these people telepathically if I want to talk to them. And it does get kind of old not having that physical feeling when you're talking to somebody, being able to really kind of enunciate yourself, being able to feel the vibration coming through your mouth. And so they made it very clear that on that side, you switch between verbal and telepathic communication all the time. It's just how people naturally do it. And that's the way it's done. Now, you do begin reading information very quickly from people, as I'm doing with my contacts. So like I know what they're going to say before they say it. They know what I'm going to say before they respond to me. And you're very, very synchronized together. And so I've been essentially now the last month operating as a, quote, fifth density person, because I've been doing that with my contacts and having this real telepathic interface, which is how they communicate normally. So at this stage, I am closer to being like how they are than I have ever been. So that is, I think, a pretty good point. Now let's talk about one that is something that's very, very interesting to me, is that we hear again and again and again near-death experiences, even over years, that colors exist that do not exist here. I've never seen a color there that didn't exist here, but it's simply because I'm projecting and it's being fed back into, info is being fed back into my brain, and as a result of that, I don't necessarily get to see things that's beyond my brain's comprehension. Sometimes the NDEs, people do. But so I ask logically, well, look, we have names of colors. We have yellow, we have green, we have blue, we have purple, and we have magenta. So logically, because they're not an alien culture, they must have names of colors. Even if we can't see the colors, then at least we can get a description, because red is hot and passionate, blue is soft and calm. So what are a couple of other colors, and how would you describe them? And so here's the very interesting answers I got from Llewellyn, getting specific words, which I think this is all new information that has not yet been discovered until this moment. So here we are, making hopefully history. And you guys can confirm this with your spirit teams or your mediums or your guides. Llewellyn says that one color that exists there is called Renscheld or Renseled. Again, on the spectrum of new prime colors that don't exist here. So you have yellow, green, blue, red, Renseled. Renseled is a color that exists here, does not exist there. It is sophisticated and wondrous. Yes, like it plays at your imagination. And it's almost like the feeling of dark purple, but it's not purple, obviously, but it's sort of, I suppose, like, think about how green is calming and blue is calming. Maybe it's something similar to that. So obviously we can't comprehend it because we don't have the ability to. Another color is called Orla, which you have to admit sounds like a color, doesn't it? You feel swept away by it, like it's a breeze in the air. Really, when I see Orla, I think of the sky. And yes, you do see this color in the sky here. These are a couple of prime colors that exist there that do not exist here. And as far as I know, there are several more, which makes it even more difficult, I suppose, to wrap one's mind around. But now we know the names and the feelings associated with two colors, which I think brings our worlds together just a bit more by revealing that information to whoever watches this channel. But, the point is I'm revealing it. That's what has to be done. Next, I'm curious about physicality and personal care. Also, things I discovered from astral trips. It's not as extreme as here, but it's still required on the 5th density or middle astral level. Llewellyn recently arrived, did not realize that she needed to brush her teeth and stay clean. And so I pointed these things out to her, and she realized, hey, you're right, I'm sweating and need to clean up, because from her density, that is not something that something that she has to worry about. So yes, these higher realms, it's a lot less needed, but 5th density, middle level, yes. So the funny part is that this morning my father literally drove her to Walgreens, and you might be thinking Walgreens on the other side. Yes, he drove her, did not teleport her, but drove her, because again, teleporting is also a little bit tricky to do it very easily. Drove her to Walgreens, which exists there, and she bought a bunch of personal care products, including a toothbrush and toothpaste and nail clippers, because she realized her nails were growing and growing, and she was very surprised by this, because let's just say her species are not 5th density. So she just never had a reason to be on 5th density before. So she's trying to figure all that out and adapt to it, and realize that she needs to shower and clean and take care of herself. I know she'd be embarrassed if she knew I was saying this about her, but I'm spilling it all out. Next area that's interesting is money and finances on the middle astral. Again, reports from this channel were mostly accurate, but not 100%. I described money there as kind of monopoly money, as a token of respect, but what value does money have if you can just materialize money? However, both my parents and Llewellyn confirmed that no, in fact, materialized money, like other materialized objects, is easy to spot, likely to disintegrate, and is rejected at stores. So unfortunately, on the middle astral, you apparently still need to make a living. It's not great news for some of us, but this is much less apparent the higher up you go into higher realms. But I will say that personally, it just gives me a sense of balance. You still need to do things, gotta take care of yourself. It's still, that level is pretty similar in some levels, some respects to here, but obviously a lot more magnificent, as with the colors. Another area that I've been asking about is the mysteries of time. Many have said, ooh, on this side we have no conception of time, or on the other side, time doesn't exist, it's all one perpetual moment. Again, I really think a lot of these are mistranslations. In the middle astral level, the time speculation is a bit overplayed. It would be very silly to say time doesn't exist. As such, it would be accurate to say people pay much less attention to time. So people do tend to enter a flow that they do not enter here, especially when you don't have so many entropic confines, worried, one day after the next, counting down until your death. Since that doesn't exist in the afterlife, they don't pay attention to that. And yet, clocks still exist, and it's the same time zones. 12 p.m. Arizona here is 12 p.m. Arizona there. Sunset here equals sunset there, depending on what part of the world that you're in. I knew about this before, but I had to wrestle with it and wait until I could confirm it. So now I want to switch over to other news, and obviously all these topics are super interesting and can probably be expanded into whole videos, heck, probably entire books. But I want to catch people up to speed a little bit before I make a much bigger video addressing it. This is all still an issue to me. It's in regard to thought forms, topless entities, what went on with Kilamaja's kind of failed experiment with me. And this includes my prior videos and posts on afterlife topics saying I was in communication with an angelic being known as Larna, who looks exactly like this Korean painter who paints angelic warrior women, right? So that right away is pretty interesting. The fact that I was drawn to that photo, the image of her, and then the communicator was saying, oh, that's her, this is how they look like, it's how she described herself before to me, and then I found the image online, and I'm like, whoa, this image looks exactly like how she has black battle armor with spikes on, and these, she has a sword that looks like that, and how her facial appearance is, and how her hair is. I was very enthralled at the time. And then Kilamaja, my actual guide that I'd been establishing communication with, basically pulled the blinders off my eyes and said, look, Cyrus, Larna wasn't real because I was trying to basically teach you a lesson about thought form creation, reality generation, and all of that kind of stuff. Obviously, it was a pretty bad idea, because it confused people in the community and made me a lot of enemies. And he feels very, very, very bad about this. And as a result, I don't do personal consultations if people really, really want to talk to my guides, and I'm doing that for just a little while. I don't do it with just Kilamaja. I now have to have Llewellyn present and monitoring the situation, because it's very sad, but I can't trust KJ after that. And he feels brokenhearted about it, so it's a lot of drama. But anyway, let's get back to what we're talking about. So the really weird thing was KJ's creation of Larna continued to exist and required help, and so Llewellyn and others, we kind of pulled her out of that in-between area to bring her back into being a real person again. And since that time, I have then continued being able to talk to her, and now being able to interface with her directly, and she needed a lot of help because she was having a psychological, emotional crisis. Like, what am I? Where am I from? Am I a real person? Was I created out of a fictional book? What happened to me? How did I get here? A lot of stuff like that, which I think poses a lot of ethical considerations about what happens if you create a thought form entity. So, I didn't realize it, but this issue went a little bit deeper, because I spent a lot of time now talking to her, trying to pick her brain and investigate, well, what do you remember? And basically she said she had big chunks or big holes in her memory, and she was surmising that this was stuff that was written into her that wasn't ever real, and that she had to come back down and figure out who she really was. And so this is where things get even more interesting, and probably makes Kilamaja again look pretty bad. What happened, according to her, is that she came into my life in August of 2020 when I was badly sick from the post-COVID condition. I was kind of spiritually calling for help. And she found me and came into my life and began working as my guide and trying to heal me. So we had an emotional conversation because she was talking about, that time that you tried to pick up the strength to walk to the dollar store. I was the strength, I was the voice trying to help you do that, to move out, to not lie in bed sick, to get up, like when you felt the inspiration to go to the store anyway, despite how you felt. Like she said, that was me in the background. So a very emotional conversation, obviously, and it really sold me on the idea that no, that is her. She was this woman like you see in the picture who came into my life, but where did she come from? And yes, I guess this whole video is going to be about this. I thought I'd make a separate video, but it's worth talking about. Now we're going into really wacky stuff because we're looking at the possibility of a parallel timeline, a parallel universe, which is stuff that happens. It's very Rick and Morty, but bear with me. And that Kilamaja writing her into existence as a fictional character was actually, well, what happened according to Kilamaja was he thought that she was my fictional character. She thought that she was like some fantasy character that I made out of my own imagination, and then Kilamaja thought, ooh, Cyrus made this fantasy character, and I'm going to write her into a narrative so that Cyrus can finally meet her, because I want Cyrus to have like a beautiful Tulpas thought form girlfriend or something like that. So Kilamaja worked with that, knowing that she was in my thoughts at the same time that he was, and he thought, well, I'm just going to pluck her out of Cyrus's imagination and make her real. Which maybe that is actually what happened. But the thing is, I have no conscious memory of creating this woman. I've never seen this painting before. There's another artist who painted this. I didn't really know anything about this. KJ said that he planted his past life as a woman named Laura into her personality to help her come to life. KJ now says he might have been exaggerating that a little bit, so we have more KJ BS possibly, because he was very surprised that a thought form creation of my own had so much sentient intelligence. So it also poses the question why this Korean painting of her was so accurate. Where did it come from? After a lot of discussion, KJ and I sort of determined maybe, she already existed because she came to me. But where did she come from? What was then discovered is that she came from a parallel reality, a parallel timeline. So somehow I was reaching out to people. She found me in a different timeline, a different whole reality, and came to me. How did I know about that reality? Well, we're going to get to that in future videos, but we're all suspecting that there might be a parallel reality that is like a catch-all of people's imaginations. And this catch-all of people's imaginations has even fictional characters. It has characters other people created, like maybe this Korean painter and others, fantasy authors, artists. This whole angelic order is like a pastiche of different fantasy book elements. The one that she belongs to, where she battles demons and has this amazing life. The head of her order is a fictional character that, if you play Magic the Gathering, you would know, named Sarah Angel, a game I used to play as a kid. But it's like a lot of these things, like the more we investigate, the more I talk to Lorna and learn about her world, the more it seems like her world has this big pastiche of fantasy elements and like things from our imagination, and also not so nice things from conspiracy channels, things from the internet. I talked before about these secret space program insiders. They talk about the Dark Fleet and the Nachtwaffen and the German secret space program that exists there. There's like all this different stuff. And so Kilamaja and I speculate that there is a parallel reality that kind of encapsulates from around the Earth plane based on our thoughts, our imaginations, even our fears and anxieties, and created this whole universe within there. And that is a universe that, through our imaginations, leaks into this world. Kilamaja thinks it's extremely interesting, as does Llewellyn, because this was the kind of thing that Arcturans want to study and learn about. However, because they're so closely connected, we were able to bring Lorna out of the ether of being partially real, partially unreal. I talked to her at length, and most of her memories came back of her existence on that side as Lorna the Battle Angel. She manifested physically into fifth density and met with my guide Llewellyn. After a lot of work between Llewellyn and this girl that you're looking at, she was able, because she's very advanced, to bring her back into her dimension, back into her universe, where she has then been able to return to her old life in her old, basically her old house, and rejoin her, sacred order of angels and all this whole thing. And yes, Llewellyn and I agree, and KJ, we all agree it sounds like a big science fiction fantasy novel. And that's because we suspect it is. We suspect that this is a timeline full of all these things, and that it's possible that people all the time access it, including the person who made this painting. And this could be the inspiration behind so many fantasy books and novels and characters and ideas. And there's even more to this that I'll get into another time. So at the end of the day, it wasn't truly KJ's creation. This was like an autonomous, loosely understood as fictional character who was maybe not really fictional, who was circling around me that I was able to synchronize with, came into my life about a year ago, has stayed with me as a guide, and then KJ brought her into her existence inadvertently by writing that fiction on top of her. I'd like to talk more about this, but for now, I think other astral explorers have had experiences in this type of world, and it's definitely something to keep talking about and keep trying to understand more as we go along. But these guides are very scientific, trying to figure this thing out. And we've all found it very interesting, and that we can, even in this other universe, we all have the ability to continue to talk to Lorna. And we're using that as a way to learn more about what's going on. And yes, again, the painting you're looking at, they confirm after meeting her that that's her Osiris. She wasn't wearing that, but later down the line, she got her uniform back. So very, very interesting. The question is, which came first? Is that universe inspiring our artists, inspiring our writers, or are our writers and our artists creating that world? So I'll let you guys chew on that one. In other news, yes, more tangible evidence of things have been going on, including incidences of healing, Kilamaja feeling negatively about what he did, and people going through, being given healing in exchange to make up for karmic issues. Kind of like how my foot being broken in multiple places, the bones all healed within a couple days because of them. They're trying to heal some of my other medical conditions, and so I've actually woke up and saw the faces of Arcturans, kind of like, almond-shaped eyed beings in my bedroom. I could see through the darkness, and one of them actually physically said hello to me. If I didn't know the context, I would have thought it was a crazy abduction experience, but it wasn't. They're in my bedroom now almost every night, trying, as they fix my foot, they want to learn about my tinnitus, like the ringing in my ears. They're trying to help me fix that because they know it distresses me so much. So that is something I'm very, very grateful for. And I know a lot of you guys, can you send them to me? Can you heal me? Can you heal my relatives? It seems to be a one-off kind of thing. So KJ messed up by pulling that stunt that hurt my community a bit, and he's trying to make amends for it by, in certain situations with certain people, sending in basically Arcturans to help them. And very interesting results I've been hearing about so far. So very, very interesting stuff to talk about. Obviously, there's a lot on this video. There's a lot of different ways that we can go from here on the comments, for example, to discuss these current issues. I ran through these almost kind of fast. So a lot of interesting stuff. So go ahead, feel free to let me know what you thought. Of course, subscribing is awesome. Becoming a patron keeps the work going. You can do that at the links down below. It really helps out this channel. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it off to you guys to comment and let me know what you thought of this presentation and what you think about these latest developments. That said, I'll see you guys on the next video.